Hey, thanks for watching the Drawing for Adults class brought to you by the Ann Arbor District Library and the Ann Arbor Art Center. Today we are going to be doing a two-part series. So this is our first session of drawing facial features. So grab a pencil and a sheet of paper and we're going to get started. So I've already started here sketching out the eye shape. I recommend, if possible, to have a great photo reference nearby or a mirror so you can look at your own facial features during this process. So I'm going to point out some details. We've done, I think, at least one or two videos at this point now on drawing the eye. So, you know, making sure that you're getting a really accurate eye shape to begin with is going to be really important. But it's one of those things you can always adjust, okay? So make sure that you are getting, you know, the corners of the eye fairly accurate. Of course, it just depends on the person that you're drawing and the eye shape that they have. So you can see how I'm making a lot of minor adjustments here. And then I'm adding in the iris, okay? So depending on how open or how wide the eyes are, or how closed, whichever way you want to look at it, with the eyelids, then that really tells us how basically how much that we won't see of the iris, okay? So you can see how I've cropped off that top part there, but you can still see the bottom. So that was just kind of the position of the eye that I'm drawing. Then when you draw the pupil, okay, that black circle in the middle, you want to make sure that it's centered to the iris, not centered to the eye shape that we have, because if I center that, it'll be a little bit too low, because again, the top part of that iris is cropped off. So that's just really important to take note of, all right? And again, one of those things is you can make those minor adjustments to make sure it is in the right place. Okay, so I've got my outline here. I'm gonna also show the thickness of the eye. So what I mean by that is that bottom part of that eyelid. So where the skin comes up and just kind of covers that bottom part of the eye. I wanna make sure that I show that, because that really helps show that, you know, the eye is recessed, that my skin is coming forward, that my eyes are not just, you know, bulging out of my face, that they are kind of in, if that makes sense. And now I'm going to draw that eyelid crease, I guess, of that upper eyelid. And as I'm doing this, again, I keep looking back at my reference. So it's really important that, you know, if you're drawing a portrait, it can be great. You can draw a portrait, of course, but if you don't really make the person look like the actual person, then that's not really that helpful, right? So now I'm gonna go ahead and start with my shading. So in the eye, I've marked out some places of highlights. You don't want to outline those highlights too hard, because if you do that, then you're pressing down so hard, you will just have an outline around it where it should just be bright white. So be really careful with anywhere that you have your highlights. And then you want to focus on this, what I like to call a radial shading. So you really focus on how radial that the colors are in the eye. This of course depends on the color of the eye. I have brown eyes, so I've always felt like I don't have a ton of variation of you know, values and colors within my iris, but when I look at some color like blue eyes or green eyes, I can usually see a lot more, I feel like, kind of more interesting variation. But if you have darker eyes, then this might be different for you. You might not have quite as much variation here, but you should still really take your time in shading it, focusing on a lot of those highlights and making those really dramatic. But you can see here how much time I'm spending going and doing this part. This probably would have taken me, this is obviously a time-lapse video, so you're seeing a sped up version, so you're already like, wow, this is taking a while. Yeah, know that this took me way more time than what I'm even showing right here. So if you're feeling like I am going too fast or too slow, you know, depending on what speed you're feeling, just know that this took me actually a lot longer than what this is seeming to. So you can see how I've got that really dark part at the top. So that's because the eyelid and these eyelashes at the top are going to cast a bit of a shadow. So that's important to note. I'm even having, I can see there, I started drawing in a little bit of the eyelashes that are actually reflecting into that little highlight there, which is really interesting. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish shading this eye. So you can see I'm shading all over it just a little bit to make it have a little bit more shadows. So then I need to shade the whites of the eye. A lot of people think, oh, it's the whites of the eye, that should be white, but it shouldn't actually, because again, there's a shadow cast from the eyelashes, and also our eyes are not bulging out of our faces, so they are kind of more, I don't want to use the word sunken in because that sounds very like, I don't know, dark, but they are, you know, like our noses stick out obviously further than our eyes. So it's important to shade that when appropriate, or appropriately, and then also you want to shade in the thickness of the skin around the eye, as well as, you know, that little corner that's kind of reddish if we were doing this in color. Okay, and then you can see how I'm starting to also shade the upper eyelid. So again, it's just one of those things, like you just take a look at your reference and see where the shading needs to be, and then notice those subtle variations. Notice the places you can see in that corner where it would be near the nose. I've got like a little bit of a highlight there, and to create that highlight, it's more about shading around that space that I want to be highlighted. Okay. So you can blend that out a little bit and soften any of those places with, you can use like a piece of paper or something like that. I don't really recommend using your finger to smudge, just because that can get oily, you know, your oily skin on your paper and then create some unwanted smudges. Now, once you are pretty satisfied with the way that all of your shading looks, then you can go ahead and start doing your eyelashes. Now be really careful with drawing eyelashes, because you want to notice and observe the direction that they're going, how long they are. It's so easy to just quickly draw in some quick little curly lashes and think that they are good to go, when in reality they are pointed in the wrong direction, or you made them too short or too long and it just doesn't look right. Another thing that people will do is make them too thick. So this is where it's nice to grab your pencil sharpener and sharpen that tip of your pencil to a nice point so that you're able to get a nice fine line. Don't overdo it with how many lashes, but also don't underdo it where it looks like, you know, I don't know, lost some eyelashes somehow. So just go slow, notice the bend, notice how they overlap. Those top ones, you know, they go, they dip down where they're actually, like I'm drawing, they are on top of the whites of the eye and then curving it back up. And then notice where in the bottom ones here, how they are coming out of that skin part, that thickness that I was pointing out before, and then kind of curving downwards. So again, that direction is really important, and then I can go back on top of these if I want to kind of thicken them up in places, just depending on, you know, what you want. If you've got some, I feel like my eyelashes are always going every which way, honestly, so I feel like mine may be a little bit, I don't know, crazy looking, but this is a great start here for doing eyelashes. So the next thing up is going to be the eyebrows. So again, look at your reference and figure out the general shape of your eyebrows. And from there, you're going to add in some, you can outline it if you want. You could just sketch the general shape of it very lightly, or you can kind of jump in by just going pretty slow and adding in some textured little lines that describe the you know, the direction of each of the hair follicles. So now that I have everything roughly sketched out, I can start building in the little hairs. So you don't want to overdo it here and make it look too full unless you do have really prominent brows. If so, you know, keep adding what you whatever, you know, however many little lines you want to add in, but just be very careful not to overdo it. I am gonna speed up the time-lapse video a little bit here just because, as you can see, I'm literally drawing each individual hair, so we would be here all day if I did this on normal time-lapse speed. So I'm gonna speed it up a little bit here so that you kind of get the gist a little bit quicker. So as I'm doing this, just like I would for if I was drawing my actual hair, I would be paying attention to the places that are more in shadow, that are darker, and the places that are lighter. So if it's a darker place, then you want to put more lines or just gently kind of shade in those areas a little bit. And then also look how I'm drawing the direction of those lines. Those lines are not all pointed in the same direction. So notice that variation with your reference photo or with yourself, okay? And then, you know, if there's any, after this point, if there's any other things that you want to shade, if you need to add a little bit more shading in places, if you want to darken up some eyelashes, this is where you kind of take inventory of your drawing and see what adjustments need to be made. So if you want to continue drawing your facial features just right below this eye, you can, to make like a full drawing. I'm going to just start by just drawing this really brief outline to get you started so that we're kind of set up for next week. But note that we will be drawing a nose as well as a mouth from the frontal view like this, as well as from the side. So this is just a brief, quick little sketch here so you can see how I'm making some minor adjustments, and then I'm going to just shade in the nostrils a little bit. I don't want to go too much further than this, so I'm probably going to go ahead and stop this video and then pick this back up next week. So make sure that you tune in next week so that you're able to get the rest of the full, you know, facial features series here. So I'm really excited about this, but go ahead, get to the same stage that I am with this drawing here of this part of the nose, and then we will finish up next week. So to make sure that you tune in with me. See ya.